So I would like for you all to imagine a student. This student is a girl, a Black girl, who was raised within a family guardianship, which meant that she lived with her grandmother. Her parents were not frequently present. However, I'm sure that they both desired to give her the world, but they weren't able to, as they were both young parents. However, living with grandmother, they struggled financially upon occasion, which permitted the young Black girl to receive free lunch and additional resources in school. In school, she struggled. She struggled in math, she struggled in reading, and her grades were not always the best. She was diagnosed with a learning disability. That disability was dyslexia. Yet she dreamt of becoming a doctor, a lawyer, and even becoming the President of the United States, as she desired to make a significant and positive impact on the world around her. However, her teacher informed her that her dreams were actually out of reach. So the girl decided to believe her teacher. She's the expert. She's my teacher, the young girl thought, a teacher in which the young girl spent Monday through Friday with for 6 to 7 hours on the average school day, totaling over 1,000 hours a school year. The once young, ambitious, and bright young Black girl began to participate in her own oppression. She began to internalize her teacher's assumptions about her. Now, I was that Black girl. I was told by my teacher that due to my learning disability, due to my home structure, and my financial limitations, that I was incapable of attending college. That was a label placed upon me. It is labels from people in power in education that can stifle a student's growth and can shift their trajectory. However, I was blessed enough to see an agent of change. I went to go live with my aunt and uncle. It was my aunt that informed me that the labels placed upon me were not true and that I could reach for the stars. So I did. I fought and I continued to fight to dispel my labels. I graduated from high school, headed straight to college. I received my degree in education and psychology. I immediately went back to study for my master's of education in school counseling. Now, as a state employee of the Department of Higher Education, I realize that the agents of change must be those in education, the teachers, the counselors, the coaches, and the school principals. I began to wonder how this process of labeling and teacher assumptions affected students similar to myself, how my educational experience and journey presented more of a challenge. It was then that I developed my educational theory, in which I like to call the 5 labels theory. This theory communicates how teacher labels and stereotypes determine the success of a student based off 5 major labels. The first label is the political label, which categorizes a child based on where they fall within the political structure of their school building. Does this child participate in school athletics, such as basketball or tennis? Does this child participate in school arts, such as band and drama? Or do they not participate at all? Where does this child fall within the political structure of their school building? The second label is the economic label, which categorizes a child based on financial need. Is this child eligible for Title I services, such as free lunch and to receive food bags that are sent home with them to their families? What is the financial need or risk of this child? The third label is the social label, which categorizes a child based on their ethnicity, their gender, their sexuality, and oftentimes their home structure. What are the social constructs that define this child? The fourth label is the academic label, which categorizes a child based on their intellectual capabilities. This determines whether a child is placed in gifted, general, or special education courses. Exams and paper tests determine this class placement. Finally, the label we actually want, the fifth label, is dependent upon the 4 previously mentioned labels, which is the student success or human potential label. This label categorizes a child based on their success within their classroom, within their school building, and beyond. Do we see this child becoming a successful adult? In explaining my theory, what I would like to talk to you about today is how internalized labels are placed on children by their classroom teacher and are affirmed by their building principal. This creates an incubator of discouraged students. I want to present how we can impact our students to ensure that they are able to reach for that star of achievement. Beginning with our teachers. Teachers, we must remember the power of instruction. Our words and interactions can and will shape how a child views themselves. When children have teachers that tell them what they can or what they can't achieve, hinders their desire to reach for their goals. Irregardless if a student believes the labels that has been placed upon them, it's the frequency of this labeling that fosters a child to believe it, to internalize it, which then can shift their trajectory. Now listen, I've witnessed teachers determine the success of students based off transcripts, based off paper, prior to students entering into their classroom. This behavior has become so normalized that it's so frequently overlooked or it's done unknowingly. From my students, I've experienced dozens of students from 5th to 12th grade express to me their interactions with their classroom teacher. They've informed me that their discouragement or off-putting behavior not only demotivates them in completing their assignments, but their ability to try, their ability to strive, and their desire to want more for themselves. However, this information is not just about me and my experience, or my students, or even my teachers. This happens across the nation. It happens in our own backyard, in the very schools that you send your child, your younger sibling, or your niece or nephew to every day. I begin to wonder again how my theory that incorporated teacher assumptions and labels was perceived by those in education. So I decided to research it. At this point, my data includes various surveys from educators, coaches, counselors, and school principals throughout Columbus, Ohio, and throughout the state. 85% of my participants acknowledge the existence of the 5 labels theory within their educational setting. 85% of my participants acknowledge the challenges that students face in dispelling these labels. Another 85% of my participants acknowledge that they have witnessed or have personally referenced a child's political, economic, social, or academic status and deferring to that child's potential. Over 99% of my participants agreed that there should be a development of practices that generates an awareness of this oppressive process. So, what does this all mean? This means that they are aware of the ways in which they label students. They are aware of how they can determine what a student can become. However, I believe that there's an opportunity for us to grow and to shift how the educational system has programmed us to positively and effectively impact our students. I like to suggest 3 strategies for our educators, for our students, and our building principals to utilize to ensure that each child is able to reach the pinnacle of their success. Teachers, each student deserves equal opportunity. Give each student a fair shot. And when they foul or when they rebound, you offer them another shot. Students, seek out those who uplift you. Find your agent of change and eliminate the words of naysayers, and restrict yourself from the pattern of comparison. Principals, have consistent conversations with your educators on what strategies they are using to address each child holistically. What verbal or nonverbal practice are they using to support and reinforce each child's goal beyond their test score? I really wish that I had these strategies when I was that young, ambitious Black girl reaching for the stars. I really wish that my teacher thought about the assumptions she had for me so that I didn't have to work so hard to prove my potential. I want for you all, whether you serve in inside education or outside of education, think about that young person in your life. Affirm them and inform them that success looks different for everybody and that they can reach for the stars. Thank you.